The vast alien ships hung in the sky, dwarfing the tiny speck of blue and green that was the planet Earth. Their crews observed the primitive defenses of the human civilization with a mixture of amusement and disdain. "Look at those pathetic excuses for warships," scoffed the Psyloth commander, Gorthar, as his bridge crew chuckled. "Their weapons are no match for our advanced technology. This will be a simple campaign. We'll crush their resistance and subjugate these humans with ease." Gorthar turned to his second-in-command, Xyloth, and ordered, "Ready the invasion fleet. I want a massive show of force to cow these humans into submission. Let them see the true power of the Psyloth Empire." Xyloth bowed and relayed the commands, and within minutes, hundreds of sleek, menacing alien craft began descending from the motherships, heading towards the major cities and military installations of Earth. On the planet below, the leaders of the United Nations watched the alien fleet with growing unease. Decades of speculation about first contact had not prepared them for the reality of this alien invasion. "Our military forces are no match for the firepower of those ships," fretted the Secretary General. "How can we possibly defend ourselves against such advanced technology?" The President of the United States stood grimly, his eyes fixed on the viewscreen. "We have no choice but to try. Mobilize all available military units. I want every weapon we have ready to fire the moment those alien craft enter our airspace." Across the globe, air raid sirens blared as panic spread. Millions of people scrambled for shelter, while soldiers raced to their posts, gripping their outdated rifles and artillery pieces with trepidation. The skies above the major cities lit up as the alien fleet opened fire, unleashing devastating energy beams that reduced entire city blocks to rubble. Missiles streaked from the human defenses, only to be swatted aside effortlessly by the aliens' advanced shielding. General Alistair Briggs, commander of the U.S. military's elite forces, watched the carnage unfold with a grim determination. "All units, hold your positions. Don't break ranks, no matter what happens." As the alien onslaught continued, it became clear that the human military's conventional weapons were no match for the invaders' superior firepower. Tanks, fighter jets, and aircraft carriers were destroyed with ease, their crews helpless against the aliens' technological might. The world leaders huddled in emergency sessions, desperately searching for a solution. "We can't keep this up," the Prime Minister of the UK lamented. "Our forces are being decimated. We need to find a way to negotiate, or we'll be wiped out." But the President of the United States shook his head. "Negotiation is not an option. These aliens have made it clear they intend to conquer and subjugate us. We have to find a way to fight back, or our civilization will be lost." General Briggs, listening in on the discussion, formulated a daring plan. He burst into the war room, interrupting the debate. "Mr. President, I believe I have a way to turn the tide of this battle," he said, his eyes burning with determination. "But it will require taking some unconventional measures." The world leaders exchanged uncertain glances, but the President nodded. "General, at this point, I'm willing to try anything. What do you have in mind?" Briggs explained his strategy, outlining a high-risk operation that would leverage the humans' adaptability and resourcefulness against the aliens' overconfidence and rigid tactics. "It's a long shot," he admitted, "but if we can pull this off, it might just be the key to our survival." The President considered the plan, then turned to the other leaders. "We have no other choice. General Briggs, you have my authorization to proceed. Godspeed." Briggs saluted sharply and hurried out of the room, already barking orders into his communicator. The other leaders watched him go, their faces etched with a mixture of hope and trepidation. Outside, the alien assault continued unabated, the invaders confident in their eventual victory. But unbeknownst to them, the humans were about to unleash a new and unexpected strategy that would challenge the very foundations of the Psyloth Empire's assumptions about the primitive species they had come to conquer. The alien onslaught continued relentlessly, as the invaders' superior firepower and technology overwhelmed the human defenses with ease. Entire cities were reduced to rubble, and the world's military suffered devastating losses. General Alistair Briggs watched the carnage unfold with a growing sense of frustration. His hastily implemented plan was not going as smoothly as he had hoped, and the human forces were being outmatched at every turn. Damn it, our conventional weapons are no match for those alien ships, Briggs growled, slamming his fist on the table. We need to find a way to level the playing field, or we're going to be wiped out. The President of the United States, who was monitoring the situation from the war room, nodded grimly. I'm open to any suggestions, General. At this rate, we won't have much of a military left. Briggs pored over the latest intelligence reports, his brow furrowed in concentration. Their technology is light years ahead of ours. We need to find a way to neutralize their advantages, or we'll never be able to mount an effective defense. Suddenly, a young lieutenant burst into the room, his face flushed with excitement. General, we've just received a report from one of our research facilities. They think they found a way to counter the aliens' energy weapons. Briggs and the President exchanged a hopeful glance. Go on, the President urged. The lieutenant quickly explained the researchers' findings. It seems the aliens' energy beams are vulnerable to a specific frequency of electromagnetic radiation. If we can generate a powerful enough pulse, it could disrupt their targeting systems and shield generators. Briggs nodded thoughtfully. That's an interesting idea. But how do we generate a pulse powerful enough to affect their ships? The lieutenant hesitated. Well, sir, that's the tricky part. We'd need to create a massive electromagnetic pulse, one that would require an enormous amount of power. The only way we can think of to do that is to detonate a series of high-yield nuclear warheads. The President's eyes widened. You're suggesting we use nuclear weapons against the aliens. That would be an act of war. Briggs raised a hand to silence the President. I understand your concerns, sir, but we're running out of options. If we don't do something drastic, we may not have a choice. The survival of our species is at stake. The President stared at Briggs for a long moment, then sighed heavily. All right, General. You have my authorization to proceed with this plan. But I want you to make absolutely sure that this is our only chance at survival. The consequences of using nuclear weapons would be catastrophic. Briggs nodded solemnly. I understand, Mr. President. I'll make sure we exhaust every other possibility before resorting to that measure. With that, Briggs hurried out of the room, already barking orders into his communicator. The President watched him go, a deep sense of unease settling in the pit of his stomach. Outside, the alien onslaught continued unabated. The human forces were being pushed to their limits, their conventional weapons proving woefully inadequate against the invaders' advanced technology. Pilots braved the skies, desperately trying to inflict any damage they could on the alien ships, only to see their missiles and bombs easily deflected by the invaders' powerful shields. Tanks and artillery pieces pounded away at the alien craft, but their armor proved impenetrable. Soldiers on the ground fired their rifles and heavy weapons, but the aliens simply shrugged off the barrage, as if it were nothing more than a light drizzle. The human commanders watched in dismay as their forces were systematically decimated, their hopes of victory fading with each passing minute. But even as the situation appeared increasingly hopeless, a glimmer of determination still burned in the hearts of the human defenders. They refused to give up, knowing that the very future of their civilization hung in the balance. And in the shadows, General Briggs was already putting his daring plan into motion, hoping against all odds that it would be the key to turning the tide of the battle. As the alien onslaught continued, the human leaders gathered in the war room, their faces etched with a mixture of desperation and determination. We're losing this war, the President said grimly. Our conventional weapons are no match for the aliens' technology. We need to find a way to even the playing field, or we'll be wiped out. General Briggs stepped forward, his eyes hard. Mr. President, I believe I have a plan, but it will require us to think outside the box. We need to leverage our greatest asset, our ingenuity and adaptability. The other leaders exchanged uncertain glances, but the President nodded. At this point, I'm willing to try anything. What do you have in mind, General? Briggs began outlining his strategy, his voice calm and assured. We've been relying on the same old military playbook, but the aliens have clearly outmatched us in that regard. We need to abandon our conventional tactics and embrace a more unconventional approach. He gestured to a series of diagrams and schematics on the large screen behind him. Our scientists have been working around the clock to develop new, experimental weapons and technologies. We're talking everything from electromagnetic pulse devices to directed energy weapons. The Secretary of Defense frowned. But those are still largely untested. Can we really afford to gamble our entire defense on unproven technology? Briggs nodded. I understand your concern, but we don't have a choice. The aliens are relentless, and our traditional forces are no match for them. We need to take a risk if we want to have any chance of survival. The president considered the plan, his brow furrowed in concentration. What kind of timeline are we looking at? We've been working nonstop, Briggs replied. With your approval, we can have the first wave of these new weapons deployed within the next 72 hours. The president exchanged a glance with the other leaders, then nodded. Do it, General. We're running out of options, and we need to try something radical. But I want you to be absolutely sure these weapons are ready for deployment. We can't afford any more failures. Briggs saluted. Understood, Mr. President. I'll make sure everything is in order. We won't let you down. With that, the general hurried out of the room, his mind already racing with the details of the plan. The other leaders watched him go, their expressions a mixture of hope and trepidation. In the days that followed, the human forces launched a series of covert operations, deploying the experimental new weapons and tactics in carefully coordinated strikes against the alien invaders. The first attacks caught the aliens off guard, as the humans' unorthodox approaches proved surprisingly effective. The aliens' advanced shields and targeting systems were disrupted by powerful electromagnetic pulses, while directed energy weapons managed to inflict significant damage on the invading craft. Gorthar, the Tyloth commander, watched in growing frustration as his forces were repeatedly ambushed and outmaneuvered by the seemingly primitive human defenders. How is this possible? He roared, slamming his fist against the console. Their weapons should be useless against us. Zyloff, his second-in-command, could only shrug helplessly. I do not know, Commander. These humans are proving to be far more resourceful than we anticipated. Orthar gritted his teeth, his eyes narrowing. Then we will have to adapt our tactics as well. Redouble our efforts and unleash the full might of the Psyloth Empire. We will not be defeated by these upstart humans. The alien forces responded with increasingly desperate measures, deploying ever more advanced technologies and unleashing devastating attacks on the human cities and military installations. The human defenders suffered mounting losses, but they refused to surrender, their determination only fueling the aliens' confusion and frustration. As the conflict escalated, both sides realized that the outcome would have far-reaching consequences for the future of the galaxy. The humans' unexpected resilience had challenged the very foundations of the Psyloth Empire's assumptions, and the invaders were being forced to reevaluate their strategies and their understanding of the primitive species they had come to conquer. The alien commander, Gorthar, stared in disbelief as his forces suffered another devastating blow from the human defenders. His elite troops, used to effortless victories, were being outmaneuvered and outmatched by the seemingly primitive human weapons. This is impossible, Gorthar roared, slamming his fist on the command console. How can these insignificant humans be causing us such trouble? His second-in-command, Zyloff, tried to calm the enraged commander. The humans are proving to be more resourceful than we anticipated, Gorthar. We must adapt our tactics to overcome their unexpected resistance. Gorthar glared at Zyloff, his eyes narrowed. Adapt? We are the Psyloth Empire, the most advanced civilization in the galaxy. These humans should be cowering before us, not daring to strike back. He turned back to the view screen, watching as the human forces launched another barrage of attacks, their experimental weapons wreaking havoc on the alien fleet. Gorthar's mandibles clicked in frustration. "Prepare the heavy artillery," he ordered, his voice tense. "If these humans want to fight, then we shall give them one they will never forget." On the ground, the human commanders watched the escalating conflict with a mixture of relief and trepidation. General Briggs, the architect of the unconventional tactics, knew that the humans were still vastly outmatched in terms of raw firepower and technology. "We've managed to disrupt their momentum, but we can't keep this up forever," he said to the president, his brow furrowed with concern. "The aliens are starting to adapt to our new weapons, and they're bringing in heavier firepower." The president nodded gravely. "I understand, General, but we can't back down now. The survival of our species is at stake. We have to keep fighting, no matter the cost." Briggs sighed, his eyes hardening with resolve. "Then that's exactly what we'll do. I'll make sure our forces are ready to meet the alien onslaught head-on." As the alien fleet launched its renewed assault, the human defenders braced themselves for the coming storm. The skies above the major cities lit up with a dazzling display of firepower as the two sides clashed in a desperate struggle for dominance. The alien bombardment was relentless, their advanced weaponry raining destruction on the human forces. Tanks and artillery pieces were reduced to smoldering husks, while aircraft were torn apart by the aliens' powerful energy beams. But the human soldiers refused to back down, their determination fueling their defiance. They fought with a ferocity that caught the aliens off guard, their unorthodox tactics and improvised weapons proving surprisingly effective. Gorthar watched the battle unfold, his frustration growing with each passing minute. "How can these insignificant creatures continue to resist us?" he growled, his talons digging into the armrests of his command chair. Xyloth, sensing his commander's mounting anger, tried to interject. "Perhaps we should reconsider our approach, Gorthar. These humans are proving to be more formidable than we expected. We may need to—" "Silence!" Gorthar snapped, cutting him off. "I will not be questioned. We will crush these humans and subjugate them to the will of the Xyloth Empire, no matter the cost." He turned to the communications officer, his voice cold and commanding. "Unleash the full might of our forces. I want every last human city reduced to rubble." The officer hesitated, his mandibles clicking nervously. "But, Commander, our troops are already taking heavy losses. If we escalate the attack, we may—" "I said do it," Gorthar roared, his eyes blazing with fury. "I will not be humiliated by these pathetic humans. They will learn the true power of the Xyloth Empire." Reluctantly, the officer relayed the order, and the alien fleet launched a devastating bombardment that shook the very foundations of the human cities. The human defenders fought with every ounce of their strength, but the sheer scale of the alien onslaught threatened to overwhelm them. As the battle raged on, both sides realized that the outcome would have far-reaching consequences for the future of the galaxy. The humans' unexpected resilience had challenged the very assumptions of the Xyloth Empire, and the invaders were being forced to confront the possibility that their conquest might not be as easy as they had anticipated. The alien onslaught intensified as Gorthar, the Xyloth commander, ordered the full might of his forces to bear down on the human defenders. Devastating energy beams rained down from the alien ships, reducing entire city blocks to smoldering rubble. General Briggs watched the carnage unfold, his face set with grim determination. "All units, hold your positions. We need to buy time for the new weapons to be deployed." The human soldiers fought with every ounce of their strength, unleashing salvos of missiles and artillery fire, but the aliens' advanced shielding technology shrugged off the attacks with ease. Gorthar sneered as he observed the human defenses crumbling. "Pitiful," he spat. "These humans are nothing more than insects, soon to be crushed under the might of the Xyloth Empire." Xyloth, Gorthar's second-in-command, approached cautiously. "Commander, our forces are sustaining heavy casualties. Perhaps we should consider a more measured approach." Gorthar rounded on him, his mandibles clicking in fury. "Measured approach? We are the Xyloth Empire, the most advanced civilization in the galaxy. We do not negotiate with primitive life forms. We conquer them. He turned back to the view screen, his eyes narrowing as he watched the human forces continue their desperate resistance. No, we shall not relent until every last human is destroyed. Unleash the full power of our weapons. I want this planet reduced to ashes. Xyloth bowed his head, realizing there was no reasoning with the enraged commander. He relayed the orders, and the alien fleet redoubled its assault, pouring a relentless barrage of energy beams and missiles onto the human cities. The human defenders fought with everything they had, but the sheer scale of the alien onslaught began to overwhelm them. Tanks and aircraft were destroyed, and the ground troops suffered mounting casualties. General Briggs gritted his teeth, his hands clenched into fists. Damn it, we're running out of time. Where are those new weapons? As if in answer to his prayers, a series of explosions rocked the alien fleet, causing several of the massive ships to falter and list in the sky. What's happening? Gorthar roared, his eyes widening in shock. Xyloth's mandibles clicked rapidly as he analyzed the sensor data. It appears the humans have developed a new weapon, Commander. Some kind of directed energy device that is disrupting our shielding and targeting systems. Gorthar's expression twisted with fury. Impossible. How could these insects have created something capable of harming the Xyloth Empire? He turned to the communications officer, his voice laced with desperation. Redouble our efforts. I want those human weapon sites destroyed, no matter the cost. The alien fleet surged forward, unleashing an even more devastating barrage of firepower. The human defenders fought with everything they had, but the aliens' relentless assault was taking a heavy toll. General Briggs watched helplessly as his forces suffered one setback after another. We can't keep this up much longer, he said, his voice tight with concern. If we don't find a way to turn the tide soon, we're going to be wiped out. The president, who had been observing the battle from the war room, placed a hand on Briggs' shoulder. I have faith in you, General. You've proven that the humans can adapt and overcome. Keep fighting, and we'll find a way to win this war. Briggs nodded, his resolve hardening. Yes, sir. We won't give up. Not now. Not ever. As the battle raged on, both sides realized that the outcome would have far-reaching consequences for the future of the galaxy. The humans' unexpected resilience had shaken the very foundations of the Xyloth Empire's assumptions, and the invaders were being forced to confront the possibility that their conquest might not be as easy as they had anticipated. The conflict had escalated to a point where neither side could afford to back down, and the stakes had never been higher. The fate of the human civilization, and perhaps the entire galaxy, hung in the balance. As the battle raged on, the human commanders studied the alien forces with a renewed sense of focus, determined to find a way to turn the tide of the conflict. General Briggs pored over the latest intelligence reports, his brow furrowed in concentration. There has to be a weakness we can exploit. These aliens may have superior technology, but they're not infallible. The President of the United States stood beside him, his expression grim. Time is running out, General. Our forces are taking heavy losses, and we can't keep this up forever. Briggs nodded, his eyes narrowing. I know, sir, but I think I may have an idea. It's risky, but if it works, it could be the key to our survival. He proceeded to outline his plan, his voice calm and assured. The President listened intently, his expression shifting from skepticism to cautious optimism. It's a bold move, General, the President said, but if anyone can pull it off, it's you and your team. I'll authorize the operation immediately. Briggs saluted, his eyes gleaming with determination. Thank you, Mr. President. We won't let you down. With the President's approval, Briggs and his elite forces sprang into action, executing a daring series of covert operations that targeted the alien fleet's most vulnerable points. Utilizing the experimental directed energy weapons, the human forces managed to disable the aliens' powerful shield generators, leaving their ships vulnerable to conventional attacks. Gorthar, the Tyloth commander, watched in growing alarm as his fleet suffered one devastating blow after another. "How is this possible?" he roared, his mandibles clicking furiously. "Our technology should be invincible." Xyloth, his second-in-command, could only shrug helplessly. "I do not know, Commander. These humans are proving to be far more resourceful than we anticipated." As the alien ships struggled to maintain their defensive posture, the human forces launched a relentless barrage of missiles and artillery fire, inflicting heavy casualties on the invaders. Gorthar's eyes narrowed as he surveyed the carnage. "Impossible," he growled. "These pathetic humans cannot defeat the might of the Psyloth Empire." He turned to his communications officer, his voice laced with desperation. "Summon the reinforcements. I want every available ship in the sector deployed to this planet immediately. We will crush these humans and their pitiful resistance." The officer hesitated, his mandibles clicking nervously. "But Commander, our forces are already sustaining heavy losses. If we divert more resources to this battle, we risk leaving our other territories vulnerable." Gorthar's eyes flashed with fury. "I don't care about the consequences," he roared. "The Psyloth Empire will not be humiliated by these insignificant humans. Do as I command, or face the consequences." Reluctantly, the officer relayed the order, and within hours, a massive wave of alien reinforcements arrived, their weapons blazing. The human defenders braced themselves for the onslaught, but even as the alien forces pressed their assault, they began to falter. The humans' relentless and creative tactics had taken a heavy toll, and the invaders were starting to show signs of strain. General Briggs watched the battle unfold, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. "Keep up the pressure, men," he shouted into his communicator. "We can't let them regain the upper hand." As the conflict raged on, both sides realized that the outcome would have far-reaching consequences for the future of the galaxy. The humans' unexpected resilience had forced the Psyloth Empire to reevaluate its assumptions about the primitive species they had come to conquer, and the invaders were now facing the prospect of a protracted and costly campaign. Gorthar, his pride wounded and his confidence shaken, began to question the wisdom of his initial assessment of the human race. The realization that the humans might be a more formidable adversary than he had anticipated weighed heavily on his mind, and he knew that the future of the Tyloth Empire hung in the balance. The battle had reached a critical turning point, and the fate of both civilizations now hung in the balance. The humans had proven that they were willing to fight to the bitter end, and the aliens were forced to confront the possibility that their conquest might not be as easy as they had assumed. As the battle raged on, Gorthar, the Tyloth commander, found himself grappling with a dilemma that shook the very foundations of his beliefs. The human forces, once dismissed as insignificant, had proven to be a far more formidable adversary than he had ever imagined. Their relentless and creative tactics had inflicted heavy casualties on the Psyloth Empire's invasion force, and Gorthar could no longer ignore the possibility that his initial assessment of the humans might have been catastrophically flawed. Gorthar paced the bridge of his flagship, his mandibles clicking in frustration. "How is this possible?" he muttered, his eyes narrowed. "We are the most advanced civilization in the galaxy. These humans should be cowering before us, not daring to stand against our might." Xyloth, his second-in-command, approached cautiously. "Commander, our forces are sustaining heavy losses. We may need to reconsider our strategy." Gorthar whirled on him, his eyes blazing with fury. "Reconsider? I will not be defeated by these primitive life forms. We shall continue the assault until every last human is crushed beneath the might of the Psyloth Empire." Xyloth hesitated, his mandibles clicking nervously. "But Commander, our losses are unsustainable. If we keep pushing forward, we risk leaving our other territories vulnerable. Perhaps it would be wise to seek a diplomatic solution." Gorthar's eyes narrowed to slits. "Diplomatic solution?" He spat. "Since when do the Psyloth Empire negotiate with lesser civilizations? No, we will not rest until these humans are brought to heel." The bridge crew exchanged uneasy glances, sensing the growing tension between the two commanders. Elsewhere, the human leaders huddled in the war room, their expressions tense as they monitored the ongoing battle. "The aliens are pushing harder than ever," General Briggs reported, his brow furrowed. "If we don't find a way to break their momentum soon, I'm not sure we can hold out much longer." The President of the United States clenched his jaw, his eyes filled with determination. "We can't give up, General. The fate of our civilization is at stake. Keep fighting, and we'll find a way to turn the tide." Briggs nodded, his own resolve hardening. "Yes, sir. We'll do whatever it takes to defend our home." Back on the alien flagship, the debate between Gorthar and Zoloth had reached a boiling point. "The humans have proven their resilience time and time again," Zoloth argued. "Continuing this campaign at such a cost to our forces may not be the wisest course of action. Perhaps we should consider negotiating a peace settlement." Gorthar's mandibles clicked furiously. "Peace settlement? Unthinkable. The Tyloth Empire does not negotiate with lesser civilizations. We will crush these humans, or we will die trying." Zoloth stood his ground, his voice calm but firm. "Commander, I understand your pride, but we must consider the consequences of our actions. If we keep pushing forward, we risk weakening our hold on our other territories. The cost may be too high, even for the Tyloth Empire." Gorthar's eyes narrowed, and for a moment, it seemed as if he might lash out at his second-in-command. But then, a flicker of doubt crossed his features, and he turned his gaze back to the view screen, watching the raging battle below. The human defenders, battered but unbowed, continued to fight with every ounce of their strength. Gorthar could not deny the growing sense of respect, and perhaps even fear, that they had instilled in him. After a long, tense silence, Gorthar turned to Zoloth, his voice barely above a whisper. What do you propose?" Zoloth, sensing an opening, quickly outlined a plan for opening diplomatic channels with the human leaders. It was a risky gambit, but one that could potentially save the Tyloth Empire from a protracted and costly conflict. As the debate raged on, the fate of the human civilization and the Tyloth Empire hung in the balance. Neither side could afford to back down, and the consequences of their actions would reverberate across the galaxy for years to come. After much heated debate, the Tyloth leadership reluctantly agreed to open negotiations with the human representatives. Gorthar, the commander, still harbored deep resentment towards the primitive species, but even he could no longer ignore the mounting losses his forces had suffered. The human leaders, led by the President of the United States, approached the negotiations with a mixture of caution and resolve. They knew that any misstep could lead to the complete annihilation of their civilization, but they were also determined to find a way to coexist with the alien invaders. As the two sides convened, the tension in the room was palpable. Gorthar glared at the human representatives, his mandibles clicking with barely contained hostility. "You have proven yourselves to be more resilient than we anticipated," the Tyloth commander admitted, his voice dripping with disdain. "But make no mistake, we could still crush your pitiful resistance with ease." The President of the United States met Gorthar's gaze unflinchingly. "That may be true, but at what cost? Your invasion has already inflicted immense suffering on our people. We have no desire to see further bloodshed, but we will not surrender our freedom and sovereignty." Zoloth, Gorthar's second-in-command, stepped forward, his tone more conciliatory. "We understand your position, and we are willing to negotiate in good faith. However, we must also consider the needs of the Tyloth Empire and our desire to expand our influence across the galaxy." The negotiations quickly descended into a tense back and forth, with both sides stubbornly clinging to their respective positions. The human delegates argued passionately for the preservation of their way of life, while the Tyloth representatives demanded significant concessions and a degree of subservience. As the hours turned into days, it became clear that a resolution would not be easily reached. Both sides were reluctant to compromise, fearful of the consequences of appearing weak. General Briggs, who had been closely monitoring the negotiations, grew increasingly anxious. "We can't keep this up forever, Mr. President," he warned. "Our forces are still reeling from the alien assault, and we can't sustain this level of conflict indefinitely." The president nodded, his brow furrowed in thought. "I know, General, but we can't afford to back down either. The future of our civilization is at stake." Suddenly, a breakthrough emerged. One of the human delegates, a seasoned diplomat, proposed a novel solution that would allow both sides to save face while finding a mutually acceptable compromise. Gorthar and the Tsyloff leadership were initially skeptical, but as the details of the proposal were hashed out, they began to see the potential benefits. It would require significant concessions from both sides, but it offered a path towards a fragile peace. After days of intense negotiations and heated debates, a treaty was finally established. The Tsyloff Empire would agree to a ceasefire and withdraw its forces from the majority of human territories, in exchange for limited access to certain resources and the establishment of joint research and development programs. It was a delicate balance, fraught with the potential for future conflicts, but both sides recognized that it was the best they could hope for under the circumstances. As the signing ceremony concluded, Gorthar and the President of the United States shook hands, their expressions guarded but tinged with a hint of cautious optimism. "This is not the end, human," Gorthar said, his voice low. "The Tsyloff Empire will be watching, and we will not tolerate any violation of the terms of this agreement." The President nodded, his grip firm. "Understood, Commander. We will hold up our end of the bargain. But make no mistake, we will defend our home and our people with everything we have, should the need arise." With that, the two leaders parted ways, leaving their respective teams to begin the arduous task of implementation and enforcement of the fragile peace treaty. The aftermath of the conflict had left both civilizations reeling, but it had also forged a new understanding between them. They knew that the path ahead would be difficult, but they were determined to find a way to coexist, if only for the sake of avoiding further devastation. The fate of the galaxy hung in the balance, and the future remained uncertain. But for now, a fragile peace had been established between the humans and the Tsyloff Empire. In the aftermath of the intense conflict between the humans and the Tsyloff Empire, a cautious alliance began to take shape. Both civilizations, battered and weary, recognized the need to find a way to coexist if they were to have any hope of a prosperous future. The fragile peace treaty that had been painstakingly negotiated served as the foundation for this new era of cooperation. The human leaders, led by the President, worked tirelessly to ensure that the terms of the agreement were upheld, while the Tsyloff Empire, under the watchful eye of Gorthar and Tsyloff, gradually shifted its focus from conquest to a more measured approach. General Briggs, the architect of the human resistance, found himself at the forefront of the effort to bridge the gap between the two civilizations. He knew that the path ahead would be fraught with challenges, but he was determined to do whatever it took to secure a lasting peace. "We've shown these aliens that we're not to be taken lightly," Briggs said, addressing a group of his top commanders. "But now, the real work begins. We need to find a way to work together, to share our knowledge and resources, if we're going to thrive in this new era of intergalactic cooperation." The human leaders, wary of the Tsyloff Empire's true intentions, approached the partnership with a cautious optimism. They knew that trust would have to be earned, not simply demanded, and they were willing to take the necessary steps to prove their commitment to peaceful coexistence. Gorthar, the once proud Tsyloff commander, had undergone a significant transformation in the wake of the conflict. His initial arrogance had been tempered by a newfound respect for the human race, and he found himself increasingly open to the idea of collaboration. "These humans are not the primitive life forms we had assumed," Gorthar admitted to Tsyloff, his mandibles clicking thoughtfully. "Their resilience and ingenuity have proven to be a valuable asset. Perhaps it is time for the Tsyloff Empire to embrace a new era of exploration and discovery, rather than simply conquest." Tsyloff nodded, his own perspective having shifted during the course of the arduous negotiations. "I agree, Commander. The humans have much to offer, and we would be foolish to squander this opportunity for mutual growth and understanding. And so, the two civilizations set out on a path of cautious cooperation, driven by a shared realization that their respective strengths and weaknesses could be complementary, rather than mutually exclusive. The human scientists and engineers eagerly delved into the Sci-Fi Empire's advanced technology, while the alien researchers marveled at the humans' innovative problem-solving skills and adaptability. Together, they embarked on a journey of discovery, pushing the boundaries of what was possible in fields ranging from energy production to interstellar travel. The initial steps were tentative and fraught with some tension, but as the two civilizations continued to work side by side, a genuine sense of respect and understanding began to emerge. The walls of prejudice and mistrust slowly crumbled, replaced by a genuine desire to learn from one another and forge a new shared future. As the years passed, the alliance between the humans and the Sci-Fi Empire only grew stronger. Joint exploration missions ventured deeper into the vastness of space, uncovering new worlds and civilizations. Technological advancements that had once seemed impossible were now commonplace, paving the way for unprecedented levels of prosperity and progress. The story of the humans' unlikely triumph over the alien invaders had become the stuff of legend, inspiring generations to come. It was a tale of resilience, innovation, and the power of breaking down preconceptions to achieve lasting peace and progress. And as the human and Sci-Fi leaders stood side by side, gazing out at the stars, they knew that the future they had fought so hard to secure was one of boundless potential, a future where the diversity of the galaxy was celebrated and the impossible became the foundation for new and wondrous achievements. The long and arduous journey had been worth it, for the sake of the generations that would follow, and the promise of a tomorrow where the once warring civilizations could finally stand as equals, united in their pursuit of knowledge and the betterment of all.